All right, what's going on, everybody? It's Frito here for Your Overwatch. This is our quick part 2 to the great meta debacle that I posted earlier. Blizzard putting themselves a step backwards towards where a lot of the player base wanted them to go. The first video will explain in detail the problems Blizzard is facing and more in depth with the state of the game, frankly, sort of the struggles they're dealing with. We're going to try to go quick and dirty into the experimental card, what they're changing to fix those problems, and discuss whether or not those will be successful. So one cool thing is that in the creator Discord, we can send feedback directly to the developers. And this support players saying, group up with me when they're pressing the I need healing button and looking at a player, a teammate, was something that I brought up that they immediately fixed, like in a day, which makes me feel pretty good about their ability to look at our feedback and at least attempt changes, especially when they're like an easy fix. So if you don't know, you can look at an objective and press the acknowledge button in order to say, you know, push the payload or whatever. I think this was a bit of a mistake that was similar to that effect and would stop you as a support from saying I need healing, and instead would look at a teammate and say group up with me when it wasn't supposed to do that. That is now fixed. Now, a lot of these other hero changes are somewhat quality of life looking, but they're actually quite impactful to the skill ceiling of the character. So Ana, Biotic Grenade projectile will now pass through allies when they have full health. This is so great for solo queue, right? In team Overwatch, they would have already been really concerned of her throwing lanes to land an anti on the enemy team. It's the strongest thing you can do, is anti multiple members of the enemy team, especially members that are trying to get away after they've used their escapes. Antiing them marks them for death, but we've all had those opportunities taken away from us because a thick Roadhog is standing in front of us. This will actually improve the carry potential of Ana in ranked quite a bit, to be honest, because a lot of times your tanks are in the way at full health, shielding or whatever, and you need to go nade your Genji teammate in the backline, hitting the thing he's fighting, healing him, hurting them. Now you'll more reliably make that play, and that's what Ana's all about. So that's a really good thing. I'm gonna skip this Brig one for now, just a moment, don't panic. Watch the other video for more in depth on that. But similar changes in terms of usability with some of these other hero changes come through, where Hanzo Storm arrows can be manually canceled. That's actually pretty big, because a lot of times, and I've said this reviewing Hanzo over the past like year or so, Storm arrows, when it got reduced in power, was kind of a trap, and in a lot of ways you prefer that main primary fire arrow in certain situations. Like if you need the one-hit kill and maybe like melee combo up against a specific matchup, popping Storm arrows could be a death sentence. So because of this, now you can exit Storm arrows or use them precisely as long as you need to. Not a massive change, I don't think, but similar to the Ana one, is going to allow you flexibility to play him without feeling stuck when you need that big burst of damage. Mei's Ice Wall can now be manually destroyed while dead. This is pretty key for those really complicated ult fights where maybe you get some value, pop up Blizzard, put up a wall to block something, but then it turns out your teammate lands a big grav and you're dead in spawn, blocking off the access point and the line of sight of your teammates to the grav, and you can't do anything about it. You have to just say, sorry guys, I used wall before I exited the battlefield, now I can't destroy it. Mei will now be able to do that. They actually changed Symmetra to be able to do the same thing, so you can manually destroy the teleporter, though the make or break immediate plays don't really happen with that as much, I think, but instead you can now decide to put the teleporter back on cooldown while you're in respawn so that you have it up more readily when you come back. Next change, Moira gets a buff where her healing resource consumption rate is lowered from 14 to 12.5, which means she will have more healing. This is one of those buffs that I think is rather short-sighted, and I think the reason Blizzard is making this is that because main tanks are weaker, as I go to describe in part 1 of today's video duo series, Moira is not going to feel as impactful. But I think if we deal with the main tank issues, we don't need to just throw stats at Moira, because she plays best in that stack together brawl style with like Rein Zarya or Winston sometimes, where everyone's fighting the same thing and everyone's stacking on her heals and coalescence. That play style in general is just weaker due to the meta state. Bit of a mistake to try to buff a character into a meta where they don't belong yet. And if I only had a nickel for every time I've said that sentence. Pharah, when flying with her hover jets, now can crouch mid-air to accelerate downwards. Quite a big buff to the interactions against hit scans, especially Deadeye or Soldier Sights. When you use Jump Jet to go up into the air, it's a very easy counterplay for those characters to just shoot you normally, but especially with their ultimates. Now being able to more quickly descend gives you more control in your hands to outplay those lines of sight, or either like, you know, a Widowmaker headshot or those ults. So I think it's a good change. I find Pharah incredibly weak, but I know console players are always concerned because if you give her more power, her aim style fits on thumbsticks better than hit scans often do, but at the same time, aim assist buffs hit scans as well, so I don't even know if I fully agree with that argument, having played on console myself. But in any case, moving on, Torb also gets the Symmetra Mei treatment where he can manually destroy his turret while dead. I think this benefits him the least out of all of them, as I feel like the turret being in a useless spot doesn't happen as much unless you placed it in a bad spot to begin with. More times than not, if you're dead and the turret's alive, you probably want it alive to try to contribute something to the fight. So with this change now, Torb players, be sure not to accidentally destroy your turret while you're in the spawn room just spamming buttons or something waiting to come back, because you're going to want your baby to contribute to the fight. And I saved possibly the most controversial one for last. They revert the Brigitte change. Rather than go into depth in this video, I'm just going to send you over to the first video of the day where I talk at great length about the problems of throwing stats at characters that are underperforming within the player base. The truth was, the old Brig wasn't underperforming at higher tiers where players know how to make use of her. Throwing flat stat buffs across the board just intensifies the problem for higher ranked players and doesn't really change anything for the mistakes lower ranked players were already making. I play Brig, I love playing Brig, but I want her to take skill and awareness, not just be so forgiving that you don't have to be good at Overwatch to succeed with her. That's not what we want. So you will notice that they did not attack the other breakpoint characters that were adjusted in the previous patch, namely Widowmaker's health going down, McCree's health going up, so is Symmetra's. I think the reason is none of those changes have too adversely hurt anything. They still can succeed where you expect them to and don't overstep their boundaries too much. I don't know how lower ranked players have reviewed these sim changes. That's where I was most concerned about that one. She already was a character that could just utterly cook in lower ranked lobbies. Improving her survivability breakpoints I was worried about, but my prediction that high-ranked Widow gameplay wouldn't change too much with the reduced health, I think did mostly pan out, where yes, she's harder to play, but those players are so good at utilizing her angles and insta-kills that the counter ability to dive her isn't really the point. It's the aggressive and oppressiveness of what she can do with the angles she can get with her high mobility that makes her so great in GM. So I think that health nerf hurt her more so for the average player, less so at the higher tiers. So we'll see how they deal with that in upcoming changes. I don't think this patch necessarily does anything to address those meta concerns for those players, other than maybe Hanzo can cancel his Storm Arrow now if a Widow peeks him, but I'm not sure that's enough to swing the value of a ranged insta-kill sightline. So let me know your thoughts on all this in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave it a like. Don't forget to hit subscribe and the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos go live. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for Your Overwatch. We'll see you guys next time.